Okay, so Lilith is trying to fix the game, but it's not perfect. They announced a unit start cap for the 3 different tiered battlegrounds, silver, gold, and legendary, and each different tier has a different max unit start level you can use. The problem they're trying to solve, and you've all seen it, is there's that 1 player or 2 players that every time they come online, they completely change the tide of the battle in your level 4. We're mainly talking about these whales where they're 9.2 units and their VIP level and skin sets just put that power gap so far ahead the average player, there's literally nothing you can do. These players are able to get into the lower battleground tiers like silver and gold and completely wreak havoc against weaker players. The idea of a unit start cap is that it's going to tone down and reduce that power gap. It's not going to eliminate it completely because the game design is built around the concept of power and increasing that over time, and whales will always be whales. But it does do a good job reducing that power gap by making sure that the average free-to-play player, let's say right now, can make a 9.0 troop. So in Gold 1, a whale would be limited also to a 9.0 troop. The differentiating factor then would really just be research, VIP, and skin set bonuses alone, rather than throwing the unit grade on top of that. So using my artillery as an example, on the left side, we have my 9.2 artillery. This would be max 100% across the board on the prototype upgrades. And essentially by reducing my unit down to 9.0, it reduces that power gap between me and the average free-to-play player by 32%. This is a pretty reasonable way to reduce that gap. They're not going to take away my skin set bonuses or my VIP that I've paid good money for, but they are giving me the choice to say, if I want to use 9.2 units or a higher unit grade, I can move up to a different battleground tier, or if I want to play in a lower tier, I can just play with a lower tiered unit. The effect is more severe if we then look at a unit cap of, say, 8.0. It doesn't affect just the firepower and HP of the unit. It actually affects all the attributes, including pin depth, armor, accuracy, blast damage resist, and so on. So today, while I could join silver tier and run 9.2 units and wreak havoc, after the change, I could only run 8.0 units, which would pretty much handicap me at a reasonable level for that battleground. I definitely think this fixes the majority of the problems, but there are some issues that need to be addressed. Hey, remember this? I survived this. And not just this, but my base killed every unit they had 3 different times. So the number one concern I'm hearing right now on the WarPath Discord is that because the cap applies to all players, it is going to get substantially harder to kill a whale's base, and that is not unique to silver tier or gold tier. The fact of the matter is that without 9.2 units, it is going to take a lot more firepower and a lot more units and a lot more losses to kill a whale base that has close to 1 billion base HP, if not more. On the flip side, I don't think it's going to be as bad as players think. These whale bases are not a dime a dozen. There might be a handful of players, maybe even a couple per battlefield, but it's not like 90% of the alliance is completely whales in these different battlegrounds. I do think the problem is worse in the lower the tier you go, because the base HP is so exponentially high that with such a low start unit, I can see that definitely being a problem. But maybe it's really not a problem after all, because that whale base in silver tier, as an example, is going to have 5 8-star units, and as we all know, any swarm that attacks even a whale is going to kill that base in about 16 to 30 seconds. So all things considered, maybe it won't be too bad after all. Now, the second issue that exists, and maybe actually this should be number one, is the way Lilith introduced modern units and the way the game has been is pretty much 99% of free-to-play players have sacrificed the majority of their 7.2 units to be able to make a single 9.2 unit. So with the introduction of unit start caps in level 4, the issue becomes a whale can easily make a full ground and full air army of, say, 8.2 or 9-star units, whereas a free-to-play player no longer has the 7.2 units in their inventory to make multiple units at all. Okay, so the question is, how do we actually fix this problem? So the good news is, and everybody has to give Lilith a ton of credit, they are trying to fix the game, they are trying to collect feedback, they are actually listening to players. So I've thought about this a lot, and I think this is already in place in the game, but maybe it just needs adjusted. But having a better all-time power limit cap or limit for the different battleground tiers as well. So this is just a generalization that I came up with, but maybe Silver 3 needs to be limited to a max all-time player power of 75 million, and then walking up from there in increments 100, 150, 200, 250, 300 to gold 1, 350 for legendary 2, and then no all-time power limit for legendary 1 being the most difficult battlefield in the game. My alliance exclusively plays gold 1. Every now and then we drop to gold 2. I can say that I am perfectly fine seeing bases up to 300 million in power. Generally above 300 million in power though, especially as we start to creep towards 400 million in power, you start to see that power gap issue come into play, where these whales are just dominating the battlefield and changing the tide of almost every battle whenever they come online. The second thing I would suggest Lilith do is actually make the matchmaking and sign-up phase of the Conquest transparent. They've already addressed the problem of alliances sandbagging. And for those of you that don't know, that was basically alliance members would untrain and remove all of their troops to lower their current power level and end up in a weaker battleground. That has been fixed by Lilith adding in and tracking the player's all-time power level, meaning the highest power level that player has ever achieved without using buffs. And I think if they simply made it transparent, and I've mocked up a screen here to actually show the current battlefield qualification for your alliance, actually show the max all-time player power limit for that battleground, as well as the max all-time alliance power and minimum all-time alliance power, and then still include the disclaimer that there are many other metrics included in qualifying alliance into a particular battleground. And what's interesting about that, and I've copied this from the game itself, this is already in there. The parameters for assigning battlefield levels include, but are not limited to, overall alliance power, average power of alliance members, highest power among alliance members, and active alliance members, and etc. So there are definitely a lot of metrics Lilith has considered matchmaking, but maybe the number one problem is the all-time power limit of a player. Maybe the values that they're using are simply just not correct to make the game balanced. I think the key takeaway for me here is, if Lilith was just more transparent and showed that to the players in the game, then alliances can make smarter decisions knowing what they might go up against, and I think that alone would address a lot of the complaints in the game. Now, after talking about all this and thinking it through, I'm primarily coming at this from the perspective of servers that have existed for maybe a year, going on 2+ years in the game. It doesn't really address newer servers that have existed less than the year, that maybe don't even have modern troops yet. Maybe a whale to those servers is actually even only 50 million in power. So this actually isn't my suggestion. I saw this from a player in the world chat on our server, but maybe Lilith needs to consider, for servers that are less than a year old or some threshold, actually introducing some type of bronze tier for level 4. What this would do is basically say maybe bronze tier is server age sensitive, where silver, gold, and legendary are no longer sensitive to the age that a server has been around. Silver, gold, and legendary already cater to the broad spectrum of the player base, ranging from casual farmer to extreme spender. And I guess to conclude all of this, after playing over 10 different level 4 events, I don't think the game is extremely imbalanced, but I do think Lilith is on the right track in thinking about adjusting and tweaking the matchmaking system to find that correct balance for all players. I definitely don't have the perfect answer. I am, however, very interested in actually trying level 4 with a unit star cap. I think, one, it'll be a lot of fun. I do think it'll be a major improvement overall. What I don't think Lilith should do is allow alliances to choose between a battleground with a star limit or not a star limit. I do kind of like the idea of allowing alliances to specifically choose whether they sign up for gold 1, gold 2, gold 3, legendary 1, or silver, and then enforcing those battleground constraints on the alliance. I do think some side effects that will come along with that are players will move around alliances a lot, and it might create some instability within servers, but it's not a bad idea. Overall, I think they should just start with the star limit, collect feedback, let players play that for a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 events, and then based on that feedback, then investigate further options. I think the most important thing is that we all as a player base are discussing this problem, thinking about the pros and cons, and providing that feedback back to the WarPath development team so they can consider all this and try and make the smartest decisions possible that are in the best interest of the holistic player base, ranging from new servers that are just starting in the game up to a year old, including older servers that are a year or older up to 2 years. They do have to cater to everybody, and that is an extremely challenging task. But ultimately, let's keep this conversation going, and maybe we can help Lilith improve the game.